Hi there, welcome to Homekeepers. How are you today, my friend? Come right on in. It's going to be a wonderful program, and I always realize we got brand new viewers. Want you to know you're welcome, and this better not be the last time you watch. And also, I always like to acknowledge the regular folks, and thank you all for being here. I think we try very, very hard to dispense information to you that's going to make your life better. And you know, when you get this pecking order of who is important to the family, boy, pretty close to the top would be your family doctor, wouldn't it? And I have been reading this book by Dr. Alessio Salsano, and it's called The High Calling. And I'm telling you, it gave me an education on from the day you kind of decide you want to be a doctor all the way through, all the way internship, all the way through any kind of eventuality that you could possibly think of, to the ability to look back and see a very rewarding life in medicine. I've often thought it interesting that in Jesus' group of disciples, he had a physician. Now, Jesus could heal anything, anytime, any place, but he had a doctor in there. And I think that elevates that position really immeasurably. So I'm looking forward to talking to Dr. Salsano, and you're going to love him. You will wish he was your doctor when we're through here. And I'm going to join Stephanie, and we're going to make kind of one of my favorite things, and that's a big vegetable casserole that's got fresh zucchini, fresh tomatoes in it, and it's the kind of thing when I go home at night, I eat a great big plate of it, don't eat much meat. I think you'll like it. The truth is, Stephanie's been over there nibbling on it, and she already has, given her opinion. Before I do, though, I again want to offer you the book that we have offered in the past called Never Say Diet. And the address will be on your screen, and if you will just write to us, that's the only way you can get it, is to write to us. And send the best gift you can. If you really cannot send any gift at all, I will send it to you, but do the best you can to keep the program on the air. This lady lost 200 pounds and kept it off. And friends, that is an accomplishment. Now I've joined Stephanie over here. She's busy.
You're not supposed to tell on me.
And guess what? I want a big round of applause in this room today because it's her birthday.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I was going to ask them to sing happy birthday, but I don't think they'd want to.
Aw, how sweet.
Happy birthday to Stephanie.
Aw, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. On that note, I'm sitting at work this morning and a gift gets delivered. And it's this beautiful scarf.
It is gorgeous.
With another one
from, you feel it.
Yeah, from my friend Melody.
And who might Melody be?
Well, I met Melody because she's actually my husband's former wife, but more importantly, she's my great friend. So I wanted to thank her because I absolutely love it.
It's kind of like there's certain people in your life you're supposed to hate. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But when Jesus comes in, even a former wife can bring a gift in.
She's one of my greatest friends.
Yeah, and all this stuff happened before you knew the Lord. You know, she's told us her story over and over, and I love it. They met in a bar, and then they met Jesus later on, and God brought everything together.
Amen.
So that, my sister, I talked to her yesterday in Boca Raton. Hi, Dawn. And she says, you know, I really do like Stephanie.
Oh, that's sweet.
Dawn, got to join the fan club. Okay.
Yes, thanks.
All right.
Okay,
Let's
so
get busy with this.
I have 6 zucchinis. I have 4 medium tomatoes. You have a 9x13 pan you're spraying. You have a cup of breadcrumbs, and you have 3 tablespoons of melted butter. You're going to mix the butter and the breadcrumbs. I'm going to take the pan. I'm going to cut this tomato real quick.
And these are seasoned breadcrumbs, which it calls for, but also you can use cornflakes, and that would be nice and crunchy.
Yeah, and I have a cup of cheddar cheese here. I just love that cake. I just love cake. So
and it's chocolate.
Nice. Oh,
and
fabulous.
I'm sure you'll share it. I
am sure I will.
hope.
I'm sure I will. Okay, so I have the pan, and I'm going to start layering. We have lots of zucchini, so I'm just going to start layering the zucchini on the bottom.
Oh, I absolutely adore a fresh vegetable
Oh my
casserole.
gosh. Well, like you told on me, I tasted and it is so delicious. I
She
couldn't
kept raving
stop.
about it, and that kind of
I kept
made
eating
me feel
it
good.
until Susan wanted to use my middle name and yell at me, so
Oh.
I had to stop.
Isn't that the truth? I saw on Facebook somebody said, you really know your mother's serious when she uses
When
your
the middle name comes
Yeah.
out. So
Yeah.
I'm going to put some cheddar cheese. And I'm going to put the lemon pepper really adds a nice little zing to it. It says you can do salt or lemon pepper. I'm going to do both actually. The lemon pepper just added a nice little taste to it. So you're just going to keep layering this up. And then at the end, you're going to put what you made, which was the breadcrumbs and butter.
I'm trying to decide whether to pick that up. It's still pretty hot. So
Okay. So
we'll have a great vegetarian casserole.
Yes. And oh my gosh,
And
it's so
chocolate cake.
tasty. And chocolate cake. Because it's all about balance. It's all
It
about
doesn't get any
balance.
better than that.
Yeah. So I'm just going to keep layering if you want to. If you get a scoop of that out, maybe it'll cool off for a second and you won't burn your mouth.
Yeah. And then the breadcrumbs go on the top, right?
Yes, the breadcrumbs go on the top. And we both have Band-Aids on because as we're working so diligently this morning.
I know we were both injured.
Yes, you sliced while you were using the mandolin to cut, and then I sliced it while I was cleaning the mandolin.
You're right about that.
That is delicious, isn't it?
It bakes about 30 minutes,
At 350.
but the zucchini is still just a little bit crunchy.
Yes.
Yes,
and
sir.
Then, so you just keep layering it, and then you put the breadcrumbs and butter on top, and then you bake it. That's it. How easy. This is gonna make. We've got a
easy is
lot here.
that?
We're gonna make a lot of people happy this afternoon.
Yeah, you just keep
Keep layering.
keep layering it.
You all right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think I got a little bit of lemon pepper.
Okay. I told you it added a zing.
Yeah, it sure adds a zing. Well, happy birthday to you.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy.
And she's got a brand new grandbaby she's going to see tonight.
Finally, yes, it's been too long. I'm so
She
ready
was
to
sick
hold.
when the baby was born.
Yes, and I'm
Bummer.
just now getting better.
And we're going out to dinner tonight to celebrate.
Yep.
So you should remember this birthday very well.
Oh yes, the day
you
I
the
turned
best.
29, right? Oh wait, yeah, 29, maybe 30.
right.
I don't know.
Me too. Well, if you want this recipe, the information is coming up on your screen.
You do.
And yeah, I think you do. This is another one, take that church supper. We're always trying to help you out, gals, any angle we can.
Yep.
Stay with me and meet. The doctor is in the house. He's here right now.
Yes.
If you would like a copy of today's recipe, just write to the address on your screen, or you can email your request to arthelene@rippy.org.
All right, Dr. Salsano has joined me on the set, and it's so good to meet you. And you've really chronicled the life of a doctor here, just amazingly. I read that your grandfather, I would say, almost anointed you to be a doctor.
In a sense, I guess that's true. He certainly had a strong conviction, and it passed on to my father, so...
I really believe in that. I don't think that parents, grandparents go around choosing exactly what they should do, but they should have a great influence. And if this was something you had no inclination toward, that would not have been a sin. But sometimes we ignore the wisdom of our grandfathers and fathers.
Yeah, I believe very strongly in the wisdom of tradition. I guess there's a verse in the Proverbs where God warns is don't take down the foundation stones that your founders have set up. They're there for a reason. If we dismantle our past, then we're going to be in trouble.
And also that they began to put books of medicine and science in your hand. Did you ever consider anything else?
Well, I have to say, as a kid growing up, And then later, even actually in high school and so on, I was more drawn to physics and astronomy than to biology. I always loved the idea of life, that there was something special about life, almost sacred, even in my pre-Christian days. But I guess I would have to say I was drawn more to the physics. A book that I just happened to take off the shelf at a department store one day really cemented that. It was called The Universe and Dr. Einstein, and it was written by a famous author in that day, Lincoln Barnett. And what more drew me in was that the author made a clear statement how modern scientists, if they present themselves in an unbiased way with no preconceptions, they have to admit that they can't answer everything in the world and the universe without recourse to some kind of higher power. I was very impressed by that statement.
Yeah, I remember that movie, Expelled, it was called, and it dealt with evolutionism versus creationism. And the last scene, Ben Stein was talking to scientist, don't know his first name, I think it was Richard, but I'm not sure. Last name's Dawkins.
Dawkins, yes.
Yeah, you know who that is. And so he was saying that everything that goes back to this one cell, you know, that we all travel back there. And Ben Stein said, and where did that come from? He said, we don't know. And here is this avowed evolutionist.
Yes.
So it's do you find that a lot these days? I know the people that I interview, that there's really kind of a breakdown in the that world of evolution. Some of the scientists are, because more and more information we get, you have to look at it through that lens.
Well, evolution is a worldview. The facts can be interpreted in its favor as easily as they can be interpreted against it. But really, it's the worldview that matters. And unfortunately, for several generations now, students growing up, unless they have some other training at home or in their own searching, they just get indoctrinated into it. But the facts speak just as easily, perhaps even better, to creation than they do to evolution, as Mr. Dawkins, I'm sure, admitted reluctantly.
Yeah, that ended the movie.
Yeah.
It was a great movie. You should rent it if you haven't seen it. I have a guest on here every once in a while. In fact, he's coming back next week, I think, Dr. Tom Woodward, and he teaches creationism as it versus evolution. And he recently was teaching or a guest in a Russian university. Now here's a nation, try to imagine, they've never been taught anything else in decades and decades. So you're right about that, the worldview.
Yes. Well, I found in the practice of medicine, of course, evolution and creation is in the background. Practicing medicine is a whole other orbit. But for me, the fact of the sanctity of life and the specialness of life goes right back to the creation story. If life evolved from chemicals and is nothing more than that, then why should it be considered sacred? Why should you weep over a loved one who's lying in bed sick?
And why do we need you?
Why do you need me? Exactly. And I pray that the world doesn't go in that direction too soon.
It's going pretty fast, though. It's scary. Okay, you were raised Roman Catholic, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and then, if I remember right in your book, something that got you thinking about maybe there's more here was a tract that someone gave you?
Yes, I was raised in a Catholic home, although we weren't particularly observant, but never doubted for 1 minute the belief in God, but no personal relationship. When I got to college, that began to change. Back then, at least, this was the early 1970s, ministries were allowed on campus. All the hurdles that are in place today, political correctness, weren't quite established. And local churches would come on and they would pass out tracts, and the Gideons International came out and passed out New Testament Bibles. And I always figured a Bible's important. I didn't know much of what it said inside, but I said, hey, this is the Bible. The Bible's an important book. So unlike many of the other people, mine didn't end up in the trash can at the end of the day. But the tracts were the first time I really was exposed to the pure gospel. And it really struck me. It just resonated something in me. I guess God was drawing me, as I've said in the book and repeated many times when I've given my testimony. Just as the Lord said, no man comes unto me unless my Father in heaven draws him. God begins the process.
He used the tract to draw you. But you know, that gives me goosebumps because I've been absolutely raised in the church, in the evangelical, Pentecostal, put any label on you want. And you're always running into people who are handing out tracts and things. And heaven's going to be great when we connect the dots and see that printed literature that went out, that won souls to the Lord. And so after that, correct me if I'm wrong, but you found yourself driving around looking for a church to go to. To me, it looked like eeny, meeny, miny, mo. So, oh, here's a Baptist church, so I'll go in there.
Yeah, it was actually, I saw a sign that said Vacation Bible School, and I says, oh, well, I want to learn about the Bible. Trouble was, I was like 23 years old at the time, so I didn't have no idea.
For you.
Right, I had no idea what it meant, but I said, hey, if they're going to teach the Bible, I'd like to learn about it. And then I went to that church the next Sunday, and that was when I definitely made my salvation.
I'm telling you, it's such a thrilling story. And I've said it many times on this set, for someone who's raised in the church, it's thrilling to see how God calls people, you know, that are not in the church. And just, he calls them every possible way.
Every possible way. It reminds me of the parable Jesus made when he said that the kingdom of God is like a plant that is planted, and the farmer goes out to check it, and he goes back and checks it again, and it grows and grows, and he doesn't know how. See, the farmer waters, he plants the seed, but God is the one who makes the growth. That's the miracle of salvation. It's all from God.
And the beautiful thing is that you met the Lord while you were in college, and you had him all through your med school. How many years total did you go to school? I mean, we can start with kindergarten even. Or can you add that high?
Oh yeah, I have this memorized. I tell it to my grandson every 3 months. He asks me how many years. Well, let's just start with high school. So 4 years of high school, 4 years of college, 4 years of medical school,
12.
1 year of residency.
13.
1 year of internship. Then comes residency, where it's variable. I did 2 years, which was for my specialty. It could be anywhere from 2 to 5 years, and frankly, the education process goes on and on. You can go back to do fellowships, and there's such a concept, continuing medical education. You never stop learning. A colleague once said how a retired friend, a doctor, was too ill to get out of the house anymore, and he would gather up his old magazines and he would periodically drop them off. This retired doctor lying in his bed just drew pleasure from reading about medicine that he would never practice again.
Let me tell you, friends, if you read this book called The High Calling by my guest, I think you'll appreciate your doctor in a way you never, ever, ever have before. It's just such a nice chronicle. And the things that you have to face, and there's so much that we could go into that we don't have time for. But in your in your internship, you touch on a little bit of everything: psychiatry, OBGYN, whatever's out there. You get a little taste of it, although you're an internal medicine physician. How would you describe that? You just do work on anything that's inside?
Yeah. Well, internship is clearly that is your beginning as a real doctor. Now you're out of the classroom, you're actually taking care of real patients, and you're not alone. Your resident is there to help you, and you have an attending physician or a professor who's overseeing the work. So you're never let go completely, but there are times in the middle of the night in an emergency where you're there.
You're
and
it.
You are it. And it's kind of a scary sensation. You get used to it after a while, but never totally. The reality of it really hits you.
Why, I've always heard how exhausting it is that the interns will go hours and hours and hours with no sleep. And why do they do it that way?
Well, I kind of coined a phrase and made up and put it in the book. I call it medical boot camp. In a sense, it's the same concept as the military. You're taking raw recruits and you're hardening them quickly so they'll be able to go into battle in life and death situations. So in a sense, it's that way. It's to kind of inure you, to harden you to that existence. But it's mellowed out somewhat in recent years. Way back then, there was almost like no pity. It's like, hey, I went through it, so you're going to have to go through it. But because there have been mishaps,
Oh yeah,
I mean,
it could be dangerous.
A resident I knew actually lost his leg because he, after a really tough night, up all night, he fell asleep at the wheel going home and crashed his car and had to have an amputation. So
Reason should reign once in a while. I do have your website on the screen. We're going to leave it up there. If you would like to get this book, The High Calling, where he describes how being a very, very wonderful physician, how he's relied on the Lord. That would make me feel good if I had a physician like, in fact, I do. I know she's a Christian. Now, don't want to dwell on this, but in your training and all, they had a sex week, which dealt with very aberrant behaviors and pedophiles and why?
Well, I asked myself the same question when it came up, and I debated about being a so-called a conscientious objector and signing off of the course. But after a while, I spoke with some fellow students who were also believers, and they said, well, I'll go through with it. I mean, there's no question these things exist, and as a physician, even as a Christian physician, you need to know that they're there and to what to do when you're confronted with it. But I must say it was an eye-opener. I couldn't believe all of frankly, all of the aberrations that were paraded before us. I remember I read in our little study groups afterwards. I mentioned to the professor leading my group. I said, you know, gosh, I mean, these things are crazy. How do these things really exist? He says, well, you know, there's a lot of things in New York City.
The sad thing is they are probably all over the United States. You did let them know your position, and you found that most of the students agreed with you. That
yes. I took a really bold step at the end of the week of these classes. I said, I'm gonna, if I get a chance, I'm gonna stand up and I just want to share something of my belief in the traditional concepts of the Christian faith with this. So I kind of jumped up and raised my hand. I probably shocked everybody. I know I shocked Steve LaPuff. He just put his head down and shook it when he saw me do this. But I said I'd like to go up front and talk, and I did. And I got a standing ovation for bringing up the God-ordained plan
Good for you.
for
That's
family
wonderful.
and sexuality.
Yeah. You have to learn to kind of steel yourself. There's certain boundaries, and you see horrible things where people die and all that. If you fall apart and cry, it's not going to help much.
It's a tough transition, and many doctors tend to put up an emotional wall and become objective, because if you cross over that line, you become vulnerable. Then you would be like losing a loved one every time that happens. So you gotta
Somebody's
know
got to
when
be
to
strong.
do that. Yes.
Yeah, we're going to run out of time here, but I do want to touch on something that is very important, and that is those people that wait, and there's certainly legitimate things, to sue a doctor.
Yes.
And you've been through this. I'm sure that there's a great percentage who have, and you won. And yet, was it something that was publicized in the papers a lot?
Not really publicized. It didn't get like that. I guess the real ramifications for me was in the aftermath. I lost my malpractice insurance. I had to recover my finances, which was poured into this. And more than anything, I had to recover my confidence. Bitterness is very easy to set in, and I talked with colleagues who went through it, and I could see how it just changed them. I often say that a new patient coming to me, I used to think, how can I help this person, suddenly became, how can I make sure I don't get sued by this
Yes,
person?
right.
And I've kind of
What a
mellowed with
nightmare.
that, right? But learning humility, learning forgiveness, and then learning to trust in God's faithfulness is what I came out of all that with.
And that's a wonderful outcome,
Yes.
really. On the front of this book, you have the Bible that looks like a well-worn Bible, and a stethoscope. And what a wonderful combination, really.
Yes.
Beautiful cover.
Yes.
And we've had the website up there so that, you know, if you want to order the book that you can. I think we got 1 minute, but I had a brother-in-law who was probably the best physical therapist in Northern California. And he's in heaven today.
Yes.
But what he had to pay for malpractice insurance was criminal. And there's so many things that need to be fixed in
Yes.
this. And I'm telling you, this good doctor has outlined all of them. And the Bible says, good understanding giveth favor. And this is going to give you an understanding, I tell you, of a book that's, it really covered all the bases.
Yeah. I wanted to try to give a real inside glimpse of it all.
You did it. You really did it. And how wonderful, you know, if you got a doctor that prays for you. We've only got 30 seconds, but I remember one situation there where, you know, it was really looking iffy. What was it? And you prayed, and the Lord, you know, just gave you the answer. And He's got the answer for you too, my friend. And I thank you for being with us. And I hope you'll join me next time, remembering there's no higher calling than that of a homekeeper. God bless you.
If you should miss a Homekeepers program, you can catch up by going to www.ctnonline.com. Click on CTN Programs and then on Homekeepers.